I rotate my primary lens toward the observation window, blinking twice to clear the haze of status from my vision. Earth looms beneath my station, a swirling mosaic of greens and blues pocked with browns. My breath rattles in my throat as I press a palm against the cold glass. I've stared at this view countless times, yet it rarely offers more than monotony. Another cycle completed, caretaker. This marks cycle 5988, the automated console said, its tone bland. I sigh and shift my stance, flexing stiff joints that ache from extended dormancy. My name is Duran, though no one's spoken it aloud in centuries. The console's voice is my only companion. I flick a claw across the screen, bringing up a screen of flickering readouts. Status check, I said, massaging the back of my neck. All vital systems are nominal, the console replied. Prison population is stable. Prison. That word always prods me. A harsh reminder of this station's original purpose. Earth is a dumping ground for creatures deemed too dangerous or disruptive for civilized regions of the galaxy. Long ago, my superiors designated this planet as a living graveyard. The monstrous fauna roaming those lands to keep any sapient species in check. I shift my feet, noticing a slight tension in my calves. My body's telling me I've been stiff for too long. I stride to a bank of dusty monitors. Their flickering glow illuminates the overhead cables and exposed conduits that snake across the walls. No one bothered designing this station for comfort. My first glance at the surface feed shows the usual scenes. Forest canopies teeming with reptilian nightmares. Broad plains haunted by enormous mammals. Swamps churning with amphibious terrors. Then my gaze snags on a group of figures huddled around a large figure in a wide clearing. Humans. My scaled lips tighten. I lean closer, zooming in on the feed. These men have crude weapons in hand, stone spears, sharpened flint knives. I see them edge forward, circling a hulking predator that dwarfs any single one of them. Its coarse fur bristles like an angered forest, and its maw could swallow a child in one bite. Despite that threat, the men stab at it in unison, a synchronized movement that betrays a glimmer of strategy. I feel my brow ridges rise. They're still at it, I muttered. A jolt of recognition runs through me. The battle has a spark of planning. Two men jab at the beast's flank while another lunges at its head. The monstrous creature howls and claws the air, but it's soon overwhelmed. It collapses in a wheezing heap, life snuffed in a final thrash. Victorious, the humans shout and lift their arms, faces shining with triumph. Rudimentary success, I said, crossing my arms. They don't have the intelligence to push further. Not truly. I watch them carve into the beast, dividing the spoils. One slices off strips of flesh, while another gestures, presumably giving directions to the rest. The kill is organized, purposeful. I feel an odd twinge of curiosity that wasn't there the last time I woke. It's faint, but I can't deny it. These men are coordinating. I straighten my back and roll my shoulders, trying to dispel the faint ache of disuse. My official duty is to file a report. Population numbers, ecological stability, predator hierarchy. I push my palm against the control panel, initiating a scan. It whirs for a few seconds. Scan complete, the console said. All quarantined species remain. Human numbers moderately increased. I grunt, flicking through the data. Their numbers have inched upward. A fraction more than projected, but not enough to warrant alarm. I drum my fingers on the console's edge. Anything else? I asked, glancing at the readouts. Traces of improved tool usage, the console replied, but within low probability variance. Understood. I swiped the reports into the archive, feeling my eyelids droop. If history holds, these humans will probably succumb to some other apex predator soon. I can't forget how many lethal species roam those jungles. That was the entire point of Earth's quarantine, to keep the worst threats in a single place. Let them police one another. My chest tightens with a bound of impatience. I exhale through clenched teeth. The dryness in my mouth reminds me I need water. I move over to the side compartment, rummaging until I find a sealed flask. It hisses when I twist it open, and I gulp down a mouthful. Behind me, the monitor cycles to another camera feed. I glance over, noticing a group of humans in a different region. It appears arid, dust swirling across a cracked plateau. These men wear scraps of animal hide draped over their shoulders. They're crouched around a pit chipping rocks to shape tools. One man rubs his chin and sets aside a jagged piece that apparently doesn't meet his standard. There's a glimmer of selectivity there. I shut the flask, set it aside, and let the console record a final daily log. Then I step from the observation bay into the narrow corridor that leads to my sleeping chamber. Overhead lighting flickers, reminding me how neglected this station is. The metallic floor hums with a faint undercurrent of power. The walls seem to press in, as though they grow weary of this endless vigil. Reaching my chamber, I pause to run a hand over the stasis pod's exterior. I hate this coffin-like contraption, but it's the only way to endure centuries of waiting. My job is to watch, to ensure the planet remains sealed off, to raise an alarm if anything tries to leave. So far, nothing sentient has challenged the cosmic barrier that orbits Earth like invisible shackles. I feel a prickle of skepticism. In the last 100,000 cycles, these humans have at least shown resilience, but they're no match for the apex predators that were introduced here millions of years ago. I keep telling myself that. Still, I can't shake the memory of how they dispatched that massive creature earlier. My arms tense by my sides, I exhale, ignoring the stiffness creeping along my shoulders. File official note, I said, stepping over to a smaller input panel. Proceed, the console said. Human population is robust, resourceful, but nowhere near advanced civilization status. Prognosis, minimal risk. I key in my signature and watch the text vanish into the station's archaic database. A wave of exhaustion settles over me. I roll my neck, feeling vertebrae click in protest. Once, I believed this post would be a lively assignment. Monitoring lethal creatures across an entire planet sounded exciting. Instead, it's turned into mind-numbing tedium broken up by fleeting sparks of interest. A handful of humans chipping flint is hardly cause for celebration. I step toward the stasis pod and place my hand on its scanner. The device groans open, revealing a narrow interior layered with pale, translucent cushioning. I hesitate, remembering the men's triumphant faces after the hunt. Something about it lingers. Probably nothing, I whispered. I sink inside, letting the gel-like material conform to my limbs. My eyes track a faint crack in the ceiling overhead. I remind myself to run a station-wide maintenance protocol next time. Letting out a slow breath, I signal the console to begin the stasis cycle. The lid descends, and a mild hiss fills my ears as sedation flows through the tubes. My lips part in an involuntary gasp at the cool surge in my veins. My senses dull, the edges of my vision slipping into haze. My last conscious thought is to wonder whether these humans will vanish in the next few hundred years, overrun by a better predator, as always predicted. I lie there, arms slack, forced to trust the station's ancient technology to keep me alive. My body grows limp, but my mind drifts to that raw, determined gleam in the hunter's eyes. That final image clings to me with a tenacity I can't quite shake. I swallowed hard, though my throat feels too numb to properly register. A deep beep pulses somewhere beyond the haze. My eyelids flutter, then sink shut. The sedation drags me down as I descend into dreamless stasis, believing I've nothing to fear. After all, every metric stays the same. Humans are cunning, but not advanced. They are merely one of many savage species caged on this forsaken world. My breath shallows and the hiss of the stasis system intensifies, flooding my eardrums. Darkness envelops me. The station hum fades to a faint pulse beneath layers of synthetic oblivion. No alarm shrieks, no red lights flash. I drift, lulled by the certainty that when I next open my eyes, everything will remain the same. Light sears my eyelids, my lungs draw in a startled gasp as the stasis pod cracks open, venting a thin haze across the chamber. The console's alarm rakes my ears with sharp pulses. My entire body feels stiff, as though I've been molded into the gel padding for far too long. I squint, pushing a trembling hand against the pod's edge and hauling myself upright. My shoulders ache. I grit my teeth and wait for the numbness to subside. The alarm continues, each shrill ring jabbing at my mind. Console, halt alert, I said, voice rasping. The alarm dies. My head throbs at the sudden silence. I swing my feet to the floor, pressing my palms against my knees while my breathing steadies. My muscles protest, but I manage to stand, knees wobbling. A dull, persistent dread coils inside my stomach. I catch my reflection in a streaked metal panel. My eyes are bloodshot, and my brow ridges tremble with tension. I'm supposed to be awoken only every 20,000 solar cycles. The override must have triggered. I swallow, forcing down the dryness in my throat. "Console, report," I said, pacing toward the door. My heart pounds. Why was I roused early? "System detected accelerated technological growth," the console replied. Its artificial inflection flat. "Human anomaly flagged." I stop in my tracks, my shoulders tighten. "Explain." "Multiple regions indicate advanced metallurgical particles," it said, each word clipped. "Population clusters forming walled settlements, defensive structures, organized resource management." I jerk my head back in disbelief. The last time I was awake, humans barely tamed fire. My chest constricts as I remember those ragged hunters. Now they have walls and organized societies. Feet shuffling, I move into the corridor. My posture stiffens with every step. The overhead lights flicker, revealing walls lined with conduit and stray wiring. My breath hitches as I recall the calm sense of certainty I'd had before returning to stasis. I reach the main observation bay and press my hand onto the console's panel. The monitors hum to life, revealing a tapestry of camera feeds from across Earth. At first glance, the planet's vastness seems unchanged. But a second look reveals clusters of geometric shapes, little squares of farmland, enclosures, building foundations. I open my mouth, struggling for words. Magnify. A screen zooms in on a broad plateau. Humans moved in disciplined lines, hauling stones and stacking them into neat barriers. Torchlight glows along the perimeter, illuminating the determined set on their faces. At the gates, men wield spears with polished metal tips. They appear disciplined, scanning the nearby terrain for threats. My throat feels tight. I rub the back of my neck. These creatures have advanced beyond crude hunting. Something flickers in the corner of the feed. A cart, pulled by an ox-like beast, trundles toward a main road, bearing a load of ore. They're mining the earth, forging tools, and constructing fortifications. I rest my palm against a monitor, leaning forward. My muscles go rigid, and I feel a prickle of sweat along my temple. "Console," I said, voice tight. "Did you say advanced metallurgy?" "Yes," it replied. "Multiple sites indicate smelting and casting. Bronze-level technology is prevalent." "They tamed local beasts as well?" I asked, noticing the harness. "Affirmative." My jaw sets. This is rapid progress. The other predators on Earth were meant to stifle any sapient growth. I glance at another feed. A settlement near a forest edge has farmland carved into neat rows. Men stoop to gather harvest from thick crops. In the distance, massive horned creatures prowl, yet the humans appear unafraid, protected by their stout ramparts. I push off the monitor and pace across the bay. My shoulders hunch, tension radiating down my spine. How long have I been under? Approximately 8,715 solar cycles, caretaker. I run a trembling hand through my hair. 9 millennia, and everything's changed. My lips draw into a thin line. I exhale, then tap the console again, forcing the station's sensors to expand their sweeps. The data flows in: stable civilization, coordinated trade, complex agriculture. I close my eyes, momentarily dizzy. I recall that savage band fighting with stone-tipped spears, and now I see entire city-states forging alliances. Was I blind to their potential? Grinding my teeth, I mutter under my breath, "Contact Central Command?" There's a static-laced pulse. No response, the console said. All channels remain silent. The tension in my gut intensifies. My superiors are nowhere to be found. Nobody has answered in countless cycles. My duty remains the same: monitor, control, and alert them if the prisoners threaten to leave the planet. But I'm alone. I rub my temples, trying to quell a headache. I fix my gaze on the largest settlement feed. My eyes narrow at the sight of men practicing formation drills. They thrust spears in unison, sweat glistening on their forearms. Something about the precision of their movements gnaws at me. This is far from mere survival. I trace a fingertip over the screen, half expecting them to fade, as if this is some trick on my weary mind. But they remain. As real as the station's stale air, I swallow, rolling my shoulders back, posture rigid. My hands clench at my sides. "Console," I said, "any sign of advanced weaponry?" "None beyond bronze or early iron implements," it replied. I nod, though I barely relax. They've clearly built a foundation for progress. With each generation, they're expanding faster than projected. I can't ignore that anymore. My mind races, trying to recall standard procedures. Usually, if a prison species shows unexpected growth, we tighten surveillance or request an enforcement team. But there was no one left to call. A small beep from the console jolts me. Increased scanning reveals new alert, it said. Show me, I ordered, stepping closer. My calf muscles tense and my breathing quickens. The feed shifts to another settlement, perched by a broad river. Smoke curls from a central workshop, and I watch men hauling lumps of metal in woven baskets. Inside, the forge glows with a bright, molten gleam. Sparks flare as a hammer strikes heated metal on an anvil. A figure inspects the freshly shaped bar and nods in satisfaction. I feel a coil of apprehension in my chest. They're organized, industrious. My mouth twists into a scowl. This is precisely why the station woke me. The caretaker's role is to prevent anything from breaching Earth's orbit. While they haven't reached that point yet, the speed of development is alarming. I rake my hand across the console, scanning for any emergent flight capabilities. The readouts show minimal evidence of advanced physics. At least that hasn't happened. Not yet. But everything else about them is evolving in leaps. My hands rest on the control panel, arms locked straight, shoulders tight. My eyes drift to a side monitor revealing wildlife migrations. The monstrous predators still roam, but more of them have been pushed to remote regions. The humans have claimed large swaths of territory. They're taming Earth's most dangerous corners. I rub at my temples again, trying to quell the tension throbbing there. Console, log new data, I said. Humans have achieved widespread agriculture, refined metals, and domestication. Potential threat level elevated. The console hums, recording my words. My throat feels parched. I step away, opening a small cabinet in the corner to retrieve a sealed flask. I twist it open and drink, liquid trickling down my chin. My gaze drifts to the monitors again, as if expecting the humans to vanish in my brief absence. They don't. They remain stubbornly present, forging onward. I wipe my mouth on the back of my hand. My arms feel heavy. The entire station seems smaller now, walls pressing closer. An unsettling thought creeps through my mind. If they maintain this trajectory, they'll become truly formidable. I inhale, forcing my shoulders to ease. Then I glance at my stasis pod looming in the corridor behind me. Do I dare return to sleep, hoping they plateau? Or should I stay awake? Protocol dictates I watch until the danger fades or intensifies enough to call for intervention. But there's no one to intervene. My stare locks on the reflection of my own eyes in the blank monitor. Anxiety lines the contours of my face. My posture sags momentarily before I straighten. I cannot allow undue panic. They're still groundbound. The cosmic barrier overhead should hold them, at least for now. Yet my pulse won't slow. I step back to the console and manually adjust the sensor array for continuous scanning of all major sites. I want every alert, every anomaly flagged. If they're on the path to something bigger, I need to know. Console, I said, voice subdued. Increase surveillance frequency. A faint beep acknowledges. I rub my thumb against my knuckles, trying to still my restless energy. My shoulders remain stiff as I gaze at the feeds one more time. For now, I murmured, I'll remain active. I check the station's reserves. Power is adequate. Environmental systems can sustain me for a prolonged wake cycle. My eyes flick to the stasis pod, but I turn away, arms folded across my chest. I can't risk another centuries-long slumber while these humans march forward. I cross to a battered metal chair and drop onto it. My elbows dug into my thighs, and I cradle my head in my hands for a moment, collecting myself. A faint hum from the overhead lights is the only sound punctuating my uneasy thoughts. When I finally look up, the main monitor shows the city again. Fires winking in the dusk. Men patrolling ramparts. They're forging a new order with every hammer strike. No one was ever supposed to see that sort of progress on Earth. These people were meant to be overshadowed by the horrors sent there. But the horrors were receding, while humanity grows bolder. I feel the weight of that revelation in my bones. My duty is to observe and contain. Now I realize containment might be far harder than anticipated. My breathing slows, and I square my shoulders. There's no telling what the future holds, but I intend to watch every step they take. If they dare to look skyward, I'll be the first to know. I swivel my gaze between the screens, my stomach twisting with uncertainty. The console's light reflects off my tense face. My station has become a solitary bastion against an evolving threat. I rub my neck one last time, then I rise and stand before the glowing monitors, unblinking, determined to keep vigil. The hum of the station surrounds me, and I brace for whatever comes next. I stand before the monitors, arms folded across my chest. My gaze flicks from one screen to another, watching men haul crates, smelt ore, and construct elaborate machines of wood and metal. The station's air feels colder than before, or perhaps my own anxiety draws the warmth from my skin. I've been monitoring them on longer wake cycles and shorter sleep cycles for nearly 3 millennia now. Each time I awake, they've advanced just a little farther, which is a staggering pace when I awake once every 5 solar cycles. A dull ache creeps through my back. I press my knuckles into the tight muscles and hiss through clenched teeth. The overhead lights buzz, echoing the tension gathering in my mind. My heart pounds as if I run a marathon. Console, I said, stepping closer to the largest screen. Expand these feeds. Show me all signs of mechanical innovation. New images bloom across the display. Workshops glow under torchlight. Stacks of ore sit beside crude bellows. Blacksmiths hammer heated metal with steady determination. Rows of finished weapons line wooden racks, gleaming under the forge's glare. I shift my weight, foot to foot. My shoulders remain stiff, as though braced for an unseen attack. A handful of men scuttle around a contraption of gears and timber, their faces set in concentration. One man cranks a wheel, and a portion of the machine lurches upward, flinging a heavy stone across a field. It lands with a dull thud, sending up plumes of dirt. Siege weapon, I whispered. My breath catches. With that kind of device, they could shatter fortress walls, or something greater. They're still bound to Earth, but these laps in engineering unsettle me. I chew the inside of my cheek, recalling the caretaker directive. If a species shows accelerated growth, we must escalate monitoring. I've done that, but it feels futile. I pivot to a second screen. This settlement appears more advanced. Rows of tilted roofs and large open plazas. Men bustle about, carting barrels or shouting orders. A cylindrical tower rises near the city center, topped by a rotating vane. I suspect it's for wind measurement or signaling. My pulse skitters at the sheer scope of their organization. A frantic beep pierces the silence. I flinch, spine straightening like a rod. Console, I said, voice sharper than I intended. New alert? Magnetic anomalies detected, it replied. Possible experimentation with lodestones or early compasses. Tech progress exceeds prior forecasts. I curl my hands into fists at my sides. First metal forging, now navigation. They're inching even closer to true exploration, maybe even ocean travel on a grand scale. That means broader contact between regions, faster idea exchange. My pulse thrums with mounting dread. Without looking away from the screens, I call out. Attempt to establish contact with command again. A soft crackle answers me, followed by stark silence. My jaw clenches. For ages, these channels have lain dormant. The absence of superiors leaves me alone with the burden of containing an entire planet's potential. A flicker of desperation gnaws at my composure. I press my fingers to my temples and shut my eyes, trying to quell a pounding headache. The faint hum of station power seems to taunt me, reminding me of my isolation. When I open my eyes, the men on screen remain hard at work, unwavering. They have no idea I'm here, high above them, tasked with ensuring they stay caged. Console, I said, forcing my shoulders to relax. Run a full population estimate for humans. Numbers scroll across a side panel. The tally surpasses my last check by a noticeable margin. They're thriving, building alliances, subduing wildlife. My throat tightens as I recall how, in centuries past, other apex predators were supposed to keep humanity subdued. Instead, the humans appear to have conquered them or driven them out. I pace across the observation bay, my footsteps echoing. My gaze flicks from the screens to the worn floor plating and back again. The potential for further leaps hangs before me like a dark omen. I can't shake the feeling that something bigger is coming. My jaw sets, and I slam a palm against the console, nearly toppling a small sensor readout. A tremor runs through my arm. Anger bubbles up. Anger at my vanished superiors, at my confining duty, at these humans who refuse to stay primitive. A sudden scratch of static breaks into the bay. My chest clenches. I swing around, eyes darting across the displays. Then, the noise fades. No message, just the station's failing comm lines. My pulse thuds as I realize how on edge I've become. I drop into a metal chair beside the console, elbows digging into my knees. My fingers interlace, knuckles going white. I can't tear my thoughts away from the screens. Every image shows growth, resilience, and unstoppable momentum. If they keep innovating, flight might not be far off. Caretaker directive, I muttered, gazing at the floor. We must prevent off-world spread. But how? The defensive satellites overhead remain ancient. They might function in an emergency, but do I dare fire upon these people? The idea churns my stomach. They're still behind the broader's galaxy tech. Yet I've seen how quickly they adapt. I inhale, trying to steady myself. My shoulders ease a fraction, though tension lingers in my neck. If they aim for the skies, I'll have to act. I can't simply wait. But the caretaker protocol states observation first, intervention second. I rise and cross to a secondary panel, gently tapping in commands to examine the station's weapon systems. A slow whir emanates from deep within the station's neglected circuitry. Flickering icons populate the screen, showing orbital interceptors, ballistic arrays, and energy nets. My stomach twists at the thought of deploying them. System readiness at 40%, the console reported. Maintenance required. I grit my teeth. The station had endured millions of years of neglect. I run a diagnostic and watch error codes flood the display. Most require components I lack. I exhale, heavy-lidded. If I need these weapons soon, they might fail. My foot taps nervously against the deck plating. Despite my growing apprehension, I can't just unleash old defenses on a developing species. I straighten, scanning the monitors again. The men in one settlement have erected a new tower, topped with some form of lens or polished mirror, like a primitive lookout or beacon. They're scanning the horizon, watchful for threats. My own reflection hovers on the screen's edge, brow furrowed, mouth set in a tight line. I see a caretaker battered by centuries of isolation, uncertain how to fulfill a mission that no one's around to confirm. I rub my forehead, half expecting a voice of command to ring out. But the station remains silent. Console, I said, turning my back on the monitors. Increase perimeter scans around major human regions. Alert me if they initiate any large-scale building project related to atmospheric ascent. Acknowledged, the console replied. My shoulders slump, and I walk to a supply locker set into the bulkhead. My throat is dry. I grab a flask of water, pressing it to my lips and feeling the cool trickle along my tongue. I swallow, then wipe my mouth. The overhead lights flicker again. I set the flask aside and reach for a toolkit. My hands tremble slightly, but I try to steady them. If I intend to rely on this station's defenses, I need them operational. I check the contents, tangled wires, a few diagnostic devices, and a cluster of spare fuses, enough to patch minor issues. Clutching the kit, I march toward the door at the far end of the bay. My posture is rigid, every step deliberate. The stale air weighs on me. The corridor beyond is cramped, cables lining the walls like arteries. I stop at the first panel labeled Weapon Core Access and kneel, tools in hand. A hiss escapes my lips as I pop open the panel. Dust billows out, tickling my nose. I cough into my sleeve. The flickering overhead bulb reveals an intricate maze of circuits. My brow knots as I carefully withdraw a damaged fuse, slotting in a replacement for my kit. A faint hum indicates partial restoration of power flow. Sweat gathers on my forehead. I wipe it away with the back of my wrist. The station's old systems feel alien after so long in stasis. The caretaker role never demanded detailed technical training, just observational duties. Yet here I am, alone, left to manage everything. My shoulders burn from crouching, but I force myself to continue. Each wire I reattach or fuse I replace might grant me a sliver of readiness if the humans break free of Earth's hold. The possibility gnaws at me. My heart pounds with every beep of the console echoing down the hall. Finally, I secure the panel. My arms feel laden. I push myself to my feet, leaning against a corridor wall. My breathing is ragged, and I battle a lingering sense of futility. Even if I restore some measure of station's defenses, will it be enough? I steady myself and return to the observation bay. The screens still display the rhythmic pulse of human industry. Towers rise, workshops flare with molten metal, and farmland stretches far beyond the city walls. The planet's monstrous predators appear to have receded further. Humanity stands unchallenged by the beast that once kept them in check. I grip the back of my chair, knuckles whitening. A faint tremor moves through my knees. My mind churns with possibilities. They could keep expanding, forging alliances, refining their war machines, and eventually glancing upward at the stars. I wonder if they already do, on clear nights, dreaming of worlds beyond. My shoulders quiver with the surge of helplessness. The caretaker directive weighs on me like a chain. These humans were never supposed to ascend, yet they stand on the precipice of unstoppable progress. I force a long, trembling exhale and settle into my chair. My eyes drift across each feed, capturing the unwavering determination in every hammer's strike, in every watchful gaze. For a moment, I can almost admire their spirit. Then my lips press into a grim line as I rest my palms on the console. My duty remains. If they reach beyond their cage, I must act. With or without command support, I'll do what I must. I lean forward, face inches from the screen. My pulse echoes in my ears. The future holds no clarity, but I will witness every step they take. And if they dare cross that final boundary, I'll be ready, or so I tell myself. The station lights dim as I hunch over the main console, studying the latest sensor readings. My pulse thumps in my ears. The humans have constructed a towering structure of iron and steel. Near one of their largest cities, numerous men swarm around its base, hauling supplies and adjusting angular components that point skyward. I clench my jaw. This design is no mere siege engine. Something about its proportions suggests propulsion rather than simple artillery. My knees quiver with dread. I lean in to magnify the feed. Steam vents from connected chambers, and I glimpse metallic cylinders loaded into a central housing. Console, I said, voice low. Are we detecting any chemical reactions consistent with rocketry? A short beep follows. Trace amounts of volatile compounds detected, it replied. I pressed my fingertips against the edge of the monitor, chest tightening. Their ingenuity outpaced every earlier assumption, and now I stare at what appears to be a primitive rocket. Barely over 2 millennia since they invented their first compass. They have no idea there's a global barrier above them. My stomach twists at the realization that their next push may be to break Earth's boundaries. Stepping away from the console, I pace in tight circles. My shoulders feel bunched beneath the weight of responsibility. If they succeed, they'll breach the quarantine that has stood for millennia. I pause, inhaling sharply through my nose, and spin back to the console. Activate external cameras, I said, glancing toward a small hatch at the station's perimeter. I want an orbital view of Earth's upper atmosphere. A faint whir echoes as the station's external cameras pivot, displaying the planet's gentle curve. Thin clouds swirl across the blue expanse. My heart pounds, anticipating something unexpected. For a moment, nothing changes. The feed remains tranquil. I swallow hard, forcing my stiff neck to turn so I can check the interior monitors again. Men in the city cluster around the rocket scaffolding, adjusting support beams. Several figures bustle about a nearby workshop, rolling barrels with clear caution. The barrels likely contain fuel or propellant. My lips press into a grim line. I rub my hands together, feeling a sheen of sweat coating my palms. The caretaker directive looms in my thoughts. Prevent unauthorized launch. Yet my station's antiquated systems might not be enough to stop them if they truly pierce the sky. A harsh beep interrupts my brooding. I spin to see a bright line of text scrolling across the console. Emission spike detected. Imminent launch possibility. My shoulders jerk with alarm. They're about to test that rocket. I suck in a breath, and rushed to an auxiliary control panel. After fumbling with the worn interface, I managed to arm the station's orbital intercept systems. The overhead lights flickered to red, bathing the bay in a lurid glow. "Console, prep intercept," I said, voice crackling. "But do not fire until I give the order." "Systems on standby," it replied. Tension radiates down my spine as I watch the city feed. Men stand clear of the launch structure now, gathering behind thick barricades. A metallic pipe juts from the rocket's side, venting steam. Then, with a spine-rattling roar, the rocket belches flames at its base. It lurches upward, trembling on its scaffolding. My heart kicks into overdrive. The rocket shudders, breaks free, and ascends in a cloud of smoke. Debris scatters across the ground. A triumphant shout rings from the crowd as the craft gains altitude, wobbling and spitting fire. My breath comes in ragged spurts. They're truly doing it, clawing at the sky. My hand hovers above the intercept controls, but my chest constricts. Do I strike them down now? A wave of dread wars with my directive. They're still within atmospheric bounds. A strike now could incite them to ascend faster, to combat a new threat. It would be better for them to fail naturally and give up. But if they don't fail, I wait, eyes flickering between the feet of the rocket's contrail and the station's external view of Earth's horizon. The rocket climbs, a faint speck trailing smoke across the azure backdrop. My shoulders bunch, arms rigid at my side. Altitude nearing the barrier threshold, the console said. The rocket's flames falters, then flares anew. My brow furrows. They haven't perfected stable thrust, yet they keep pushing higher. The caretaker training in me demands I act, but something stays my hand. I recall their steady determination across generations, these men who strive against the impossible. Moments later, the rocket sputters, losing momentum. Black smoke spews from its undercarriage. It tilts precariously, as if caught in a gust of wind, then tumbles. I see a distant bloom of fire as it disintegrates, debris raining back down to earth. I slump forward, pressing my forehead against the console. Relief and a strange pang of sympathy course through me. They failed this time, but that doesn't quell the roiling in my gut. I was a fool to think they might give up. These people, who conquered a planet filled with apex predators and dangerous natural hazards. If they tried once, they'll try again. I steady myself and focus on the monitors. The city below is in chaos, men rushing to extinguish flaming wreckage, yet there's a palatable sense of resolve in their movements. I see them pull survivors from the crash site, gather intact components, and study the broken sections. They're already learning. My jaw tightens as I press a series of commands. Console, scan for further rocket construction across the planet. An array of readouts flickers by. I catch sight of smaller projects in distant regions. They appear to be prototypes. Rudimentary rockets, fuel experiments. Most of them appear to be weapons meant for a war. If I'm lucky, they'll annihilate themselves. But even if I destroy one site, others will push forward. The caretaker directive demands containment, but these men seem boundless. I pivot to the external camera feed. Earth's curvature glimmers with the same placid beauty, but my perspective is forever changed. They've touched the edge of the sky. My gaze flicks to the station's weapon interface, my shoulders tense, recalling how outdated these systems are. Even if they do function, I'm uncertain how many targets I could handle at once. Swallowing hard, I pace the observation bay. My footsteps thud in tight, anxious rhythms. The idea of confronting a manned vessel unsettles me more than I care to admit. If they send living crews, I might be forced to kill them in accordance with caretaker protocols. The thought makes my stomach churn. I whip around to face the monitors again. Each feed shows the aftermath of that rocket's failure. Workers sift through twisted metal collecting data. This will only fuel their next attempt. My hand shakes slightly as I brush a line of sweat from my temple. The console's voice disrupts my turmoil. Energy signature detected, it said. One of the smaller workshops is testing a reaction chamber. I exhale sharply, staring at the feed. Deep within a cavernous workshop, men tinker with metal piping, apparently forging a new engine. They're impossibly determined. My arms tingle with cold dread. It's no longer a question if they reach orbit, but when. Grinding my teeth, I step to the weapon's controls, pressing a trembling finger against the activation switch. My vision wavers. The caretaker directive weighs on me like a lead mantle. Are these men truly criminals to be obliterated? Or have they simply evolved, forging ahead against unimaginable odds? I can't muster an answer. Instead, I drop my hand from the switch. My shoulders droop, drained of certainty. I move to the communication panel, though I know it's futile. "Console," I said, voice tight. Attempt contact with Central Command again. Static hisses across the line. I close my eyes, frustration knotting my brow. No response. We're alone. The caretaker station, forgotten by the galaxy, stands as the last gatekeeper. And the ones behind the gate have no idea they're prisoners. I push aside that thought and straighten, a jolt of determination coursing through me. They haven't breached orbit yet. Until that moment, I can stand watch. Perhaps I can dissuade them, or at least be ready to confront them. My chest tightens at the prospect, but I cannot shirk my duty. My gaze drifts to an auxiliary readout showing the station's defense satellites. I've patched a few more circuits, but their readiness remains questionable. Even so, I punch in a code to partially power one. The hum of ancient machinery resonates through the deck, sending faint vibrations up my legs. I press my palms against the console to steady myself. My throat feels raw. On the monitor, I see a swirl of activity on Earth's surface, men scurrying through smoke and broken metal. Their determination is grim, unwavering. I can almost sense their collective will forging a path to the stars. Closing my eyes, I exhale slowly. The caretaker's duty is clear. Hold the line. But my conscience simmers with doubt. After witnessing their resilience, I know they won't stop. The next rocket, or the next balloon, might succeed. "Console," I said, staring at the swirling clouds of the external camera. "Maintain full surveillance. Alert me at any sign of launch readiness." "Affirmative," it replied. My shoulders slump. I sink into the metal chair, heart drumming. The bay feels claustrophobic under the red emergency glow. My gaze flickers from one screen to another, capturing every frantic human gesture, every scrap of metal reworked for another attempt. I suspect I'll have to make a choice soon. One that will decide the future. I press my fingertips together, breathing carefully to steady the tension roiling in my chest. Leaning forward, I rest my elbows on the console. This station has stood guard over Earth for eons, but rarely has a caretaker faced such a moment. Outside, the planet turns in silent beauty, oblivious to the conflict building in orbit. I close my eyes and try to gather my courage. One way or another, a confrontation is inevitable. I remain slumped in my metal chair, eyes glued to the consoles bathed in the station's red glow. My shoulders ache from tension, and my fingers twitch against the armrests. Below me, on that swirling blue planet, men scurry through their runs, salvaging what they can. Another rocket attempt ended in flames, yet I know they're already planning another. A faint whir behind me makes me flinch. I spin to see the external camera feed shift, drawn to a flashing beacon. My pulse jumps. Something rises from Earth's surface, slow at first, then faster. It's smaller than the previous rocket, perhaps a unmanned test. I stare, heart pounding, as the craft angles toward the sky. "Console," I said, breath catching in my throat. "Scan for life signs on that vessel." "Minimal organic presence," it replied. I tightened my jaw. They've sent a drone, or an automated probe, a precursor to another launch. The caretaker protocol urges me to intercept, but my hand hovers above the control panel. I remain frozen watching the feed. The craft jitters and stutters, but it keeps climbing. A swirl of smoke blossoms around the base of that cylindrical shape. Then it stabilizes. My chest tightens, torn between alarm and reluctant admiration. They're determined. I grind my teeth, leaning closer to the screen. The craft climbs higher than I expected, nearing the invisible barrier that fences Earth. Suddenly, the feed crackles. A mechanical whine distorts my view of the drone as it nears the cosmic boundary. Then, it falters. Flames burst from a lower thruster. Pieces peel away, spinning wildly. My throat constricts at the sight of the burning fragments raining back towards the atmosphere. I exhale through clenched teeth. Another failed attempt. My shoulders slump, though not in relief. These men won't stop. Each effort brings them closer, and soon they'll have a craft strong enough to breach the barrier. The caretaker duty weighs on me like a vice. I jolt upright at a new alert blinking on the console. The station's sensors detect a gathering of advanced components in that same city. They're assembling something bigger, a rocket more ambitious than any of their others. The men move in purposeful lines, forging reinforced frames. I pace, scanning the lines of data. My steps echo in the cramped bay. With each stride, tension knots in my neck. They're coordinating at unprecedented scale, wielding plates, shaping new engines. My stomach churns at the unstoppable momentum. My gaze drifts to the station's battered weapon system, only half restored from my hasty repairs. I press my lips together. A direct strike could obliterate their launch site. But the caretaker's prime directive is minimal interference until they threaten to leave. Only then must I act. My hand trembles at the thought. A shrill beep jolts me. The station's sensors detect a separate signal, more refined. I look up and see a new construct rising from a distant airfield. Its shape, aerodynamic, topped with a pointed nose. My spine stiffens. There are 2 launch attempts now, one overshadowing the other. Console, I said, voice raw. Focus on the secondary craft. Any life signs? A brief pause. Yes. 3 human males aboard. My heart hammers against my ribs. This is no drone. I step forward, nearly pressing my face to the monitor. A cluster of men stands by a ground station, scanning the sky with large telescopes. The rocket lurches upward, belching flame from its underside, but it holds course. I grit my teeth, arms rigid at my sides. They're truly heading for the stars, oblivious to the caretaker station that floats above them. One part of me wants to hail them, to warn them. Another part warns I must remain hidden until they violate the boundary. My chest heaves as the rocket shrugs off atmospheric turbulence. The caretaker directive roars in my mind. If they break free of the planet, I'm obligated to respond. My trembling hand hovers near the intercept switch, sweat beading on my brow. The rocket climbs, and my breath stutters. A pang of dread coils low in my gut. An urgent beep reverberates. The console's voice disrupts my frantic thoughts. They have nearly reached the barrier, caretaker. I glance at the station's external feed. From high orbit, I see the rocket's exhaust glowing faintly. My shoulders tighten, sweat trickling along my temple. This is it? I slam my palm against the console. Activate intercept, I said, voice shaking. Prepare to fire. Indicators flash. A faint rumble resonates through the station as ancient cannons spool up. My jaw clenches. On the monitor, the rocket's nose kisses the barrier. Sparks flicker around the hull, and I see a surge of alarm among the astronauts. The rocket wobbles. They're about to break through. I flick the cover off the firing switch, heart in my throat. My finger hovers, my stomach twisting. They have no notion Earth is a cosmic prison, nor any clue I watch from above. My teeth grind together. The rocket trembles, then slips through the barrier with a flash. A wave of distortion ripples outward. My mind reels. They're in space, truly free of the planet's clasp. Alarms shriek across the bay. The caretaker protocol demands immediate containment. My head buzzes with adrenaline. I force my trembling finger down. A beam lances from the station, arcing towards the rocket's path. But the station's targeting is unsteady from centuries of disrepair. The shot wavers and clips only a fin. The rocket jolts, spinning. My stomach plummets. The console crackles. Signal from the craft, it said. mechanical voice wavering. They're transmitting wide-spectrum calls. My entire body goes rigid. They're trying to communicate. I inhale, chest heaving. The caretaker role never prepared me for direct contact with the inmates. My brow furrows, but they have found me, or at least sense something fired on them. My throat feels raw. I slam a trembling fist against the console. I can't destroy them now. Not in good conscience. They'll die if I leave them spinning. Sucking in a breath, I switch the station's comm systems to an open frequency. My heart pounds so fiercely I can hardly speak. "This is the caretaker station," I said, voice unsteady. "Identify yourselves." There's a tense crackle. Then a rough voice answers, shaky but resolute. "Station, we are explorers from Earth. Our craft is damaged. Can you assist?" My eyes burn. A swirl of conflict rages inside me. My arms quake, and I swallowed hard. "You are violating quarantine. Earth is not permitted to reach into space." A pause. Another voice breaks through. "Who are you to say that?" I stare at the deck, chest tightened, my posture slumps. These men overcame every obstacle. They cling to life in a crippled rocket. My mouth goes dry. I can sense their fear, but also defiance. My mission statement echoes, demanding I respond with force. Instead, I exhale, forcing my shoulders to loosen. "I am Duran," I said, voice low, caretaker of Earth's prison barrier. The rocket comms picks up a startled murmur. One of them speaks again, quieter. "Prison? What are you talking about?" My heart drubs with panic, but I can't hide the truth now. My legs feel weak. I lean against the console. "Long ago," I said, voice trembling, "alien civilizations exiled dangerous species to Earth. Nothing was ever meant to leave." They go silent. The only sound is static. My eyes flick to the screen, seeing the craft spin slow as thrusters adjust. Flames lick one side of the hull, but they hold on. A crackle returns over the comm. "That's insane," the pilot said, ragged breath audible. "We've never seen such aliens. We fought beasts, yes, but we conquered them. Why leave us here?" I struggle for composure, pacing in a tight circle. My gaze darts to the station's lonely corridors. "You were placed there alongside other countless horrors," I said, shoulders rigid, "so the galaxy could forget you." A pause. Then the pilot's voice comes with quiet determination. "We made it out." My breath catches. Despite everything, they stand resolute in zero gravity, battered, but unbroken. I press a shaky hand against the console. The caretaker directive thrashes in my mind, yet a part of me sees these men as more than inmates. They are survivors, shaped by a world meant to kill them. Their craft drifts precariously close to my station's perimeter. I scan the readouts. They're losing stability. My chest aches. I flick a switch, engaging a docking tether. The station lurches. A metallic tendril extends, hooking on to their rocket's hull. On the monitor, I see them flinch at the jolt. "What are you doing?" one man asked, voice quivering. "I'm preventing you from burning up," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "Your vessel is compromised." Static crackles, then a calmer statement emerges. "If you can help, please do. We have so many questions." I swallow, tasting the salt of sweat on my upper lip. My entire body trembles with conflicting loyalties. The caretaker's stance was always absolute. Keep them imprisoned. But these men are here, breathing the vacuum of space, alive despite every obstacle. I watch the docking procedure complete. My shoulders slump with a mix of dread and strange relief. The comm line stays open, letting me hear their cautious breaths and frantic console readouts. They must realize how precarious this moment is. After a tense pause, I speak, my voice thin. "You can board," I said, feeling my heart pound. "Use the airlock. I'll explain everything." A short, ragged laugh erupts from their side. "We're in your hands," the pilot said. I stand there, eyes locked on the pressurized corridor that leads to the docking module. My spine tingles. I never imagined sharing this station with humans. Footsteps pound against the rocket's interior, transmitted through the tether. My chest tightens. The caretaker directive echoes in the back of my mind, but it feels distant now. These men have ascended from Earth, bringing defiance and curiosity. I can't see them as criminals. I can't kill them for daring to learn. Besides, it's not like there's anyone left to even punish them. Nothing left to protect from them. They may as well be the only sapients left. Who am I to extinguish the last semblance of life in the universe? My lips part on a shaky breath. "Consul," I said, voice echoing in the silent bay. "Deactivate intercept systems." The station lights flick to normal, relinquishing the ominous red. My posture relaxes. I glance at the monitors one last time, seeing Earth spinning below, the planet that failed to hold its children. Then I draw myself up. Footsteps echo in the docking corridor, and I brace for the encounter. They'll want answers, and I'll give them. Perhaps they'll fear me, or perhaps they'll meet me with the same resolve that carried them from beyond the stars. Either way, the caretaker's domain has changed forever. With a final exhale, I turn to face the airlock. Beyond that metal door, 3 men stand, living proof that no prison can cage human ambition. My heart beats quickly, torn between dread and wonder. My station may be all that remains of an old order, but Earth's children have risen anyway. I set my shoulders staring at the door. If I must break every protocol to meet them, so be it. I will speak the truth, and in doing so, accept that this world, and perhaps the galaxy, belongs to them now.